Hi, I'm Emma. The text message from my husband at 2 a.m., was she wrong? Let's get into it. The text message didn't come from a stranger. It came from my husband, Marcus, at 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday, sent to the group chat we shared with our closest friends, the one where we usually posted birthday wishes and anniversary photos. It read, "I can't do this anymore. I love her. I'm not leaving yet, but I'm leaving my soul behind." The screen went black in my hand, the silence of the empty house rushing back in so violently I thought my eardrums would burst. I sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at the glowing rectangle, waiting for the scream that didn't come. I didn't scream. I just felt a strange, hollow warmth spreading through my chest, a feeling like dropping into freezing water after months of suffocating heat. This wasn't the moment I expected to find out my marriage was over. We had been married for 6 years, and I thought we were just in a rough patch, a boring, gray valley between the peaks of our lives. But this relationship didn't end in a single moment. It ended slowly, over time, buried under layers of routine, exhaustion, and the quiet erosion of trust. And to understand how we got here, to understand why a man who bought me flowers for 3 birthdays in a row could send a confession to our entire friend group at 2:14 a.m., you need to know how it began. We met at a coffee shop in the city that smelled of burnt espresso and rain, the kind of place where everyone wears oversized sweaters and pretends to be deep in conversation with their laptops. Marcus was the guy in the corner with the violin case, the one who looked like he was listening to music only he could hear. I was the one who spilled a latte all over the table, laughing until my stomach hurt, and he walked over, not to scold me, but to hand me a napkin and ask if I wanted to try the croissant from the other shop across the street. We spent the next 4 hours talking, not about the weather, but about the things we were too afraid to talk to anyone else about. He was an architect, a man who saw beauty in structural failure and found ways to make things stand taller. I was a graphic designer, a woman who needed everything to be perfect or not at all. We were opposites in a way that felt like a puzzle finally completing itself. The early days were a blur of golden hours and stolen kisses, of him walking me home at 2 a.m. just to make sure I got inside, of me falling asleep on his shoulder while he worked late into the night, drawing plans for houses we might never build together. There was a genuine, electric spark that made me believe, with every fiber of my being, that this was the one. That this was the person who would know me better than I knew myself, who would catch me when I fell, who would hold the world at bay. We were young, ambitious, and terrified of being alone, and we built a fortress of love that felt impenetrable. But looking back, the cracks were already there, hidden beneath the foundation of our affection. I remember the first time he canceled our dinner reservation because he had to work on a deadline, and I remember the second time, and the third. I remember the way he started checking his phone with a furrowed brow whenever my friends called, the way he started spending more time at the office, and the way he started sleeping on the side of the bed further away from me, as if the distance between our bodies was a buffer against some invisible storm. I told myself it was just stress. I told myself he was building his future. I told myself that love was supposed to involve compromise, that love was supposed to involve waiting. But love, I was learning, was not supposed to involve a slow, agonizing fade where you stop recognizing the person standing right in front of you. The deterioration wasn't a sudden explosion, it was a slow-motion car crash where the brakes kept failing. It started with the small, specific arguments that felt like the end of the world at the time. I needed him to listen to me vent about my boss, and instead, he would give me a solution, a logical fix, while I felt him drifting away, his mind already somewhere else. He promised he would help me repaint the living room on the weekend, and every weekend he would come home exhausted, claiming his workload had doubled, and then he would fall asleep on the couch before I even finished the first coat. There was a moment, 6 months into this slide, where I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for a hotel I had never heard of, a place on the other side of the city. My heart stopped. I confronted him, tears streaming down my face, demanding to know what he was doing there. He looked at me with a mix of exhaustion and irritation, saying he was just meeting a client for lunch, that the client lived nearby, that I was being paranoid, that I was making a scene out of nothing. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I rationalized it as a work stress thing, a client meeting that was a little too long, a lunch that turned into a coffee that turned into a nap on the couch. I told myself that he was just overwhelmed, that we were both stressed, that this was a temporary phase. We almost ended it right then. I was ready to pack my bags, ready to walk out that door and never look back. But then he held me, he apologized, he promised to do better, and he made me that promise with eyes that looked so tired and so sincere that I couldn't bring myself to leave. I stayed. I convinced myself that we were just in a slump, that every relationship goes through this, that if I just loved him harder, if I just gave him more space, if I just stopped nagging, things would go back to how they were. We went on a weekend trip to the coast, the first time in a year we actually looked at each other without checking our phones. For 2 days, the fog lifted. We laughed, we held hands, we talked about our future, and I thought, this is it. We made it. We're through the worst of it. But the moment we got back to the city, the silence returned, heavier than before. He started coming home later, his phone locked and hidden, his touch becoming more distant, more mechanical. I started noticing the small details I had ignored before, the way he flinched when his phone buzzed, the way he changed his passwords, the way he started sleeping on the couch more often, claiming the bed was too cold. I told myself he was having a midlife crisis. I told myself he was just overwhelmed with work. I told myself that love was supposed to be resilient, that love was supposed to survive the storms. But love, I was learning, was not supposed to be the only thing keeping a marriage together. The betrayal wasn't a single event, it was a parallel life that had been running in the shadows of our marriage for nearly 2 years. Marcus's affair wasn't with a younger, glamorous woman in a high-rise office, and it wasn't a frantic, passionate fling. It was with Elena, a graphic designer from a firm he worked with, a woman who was kind, patient, and exactly the kind of support he had told me he needed but I hadn't been able to provide. They had started as late-night work calls, complaining about the same clients, the same deadlines, the same frustrations. It had turned into emails, then coffee, then dinner, and eventually, a series of hotel rooms and weekend getaways that he had planned with a precision that terrified me. He had been stealing from our joint savings account, small amounts at first, 500 here, 1,000 there, to fund these trips, to pay for gifts for her, to cover the costs of a business trip that was actually a 3-day romance in a cabin up north. He had told me he was building a reserve for a down payment on a house, a lie that I had believed for years, watching our savings grow, thinking we were building a future together. But that money was being drained to build a future with someone else. The thing that made it so devastating was not just the act of cheating, but the sheer length of it. 2 years. 2 years of lies, of gaslighting, of me wondering if I was going crazy, while he was planning a life with another woman. He had even bought her a ring, a promise ring, a symbol of a commitment that he had made to our marriage a decade ago. The unraveling began not with a confrontation, but with a glitch. I was looking for a tax document for our joint filing, and I found a transfer to a credit card I didn't know about, a card he had opened in his name only, a card with a balance of over $12,000. I called him, my voice shaking, demanding to know what it was. He lied. He said it was for a work expense, a client gift, a business card that he had forgotten to write down. I didn't believe him. I dug deeper. I found the hotel receipts, the airline tickets, the text messages that he had deleted from his phone but not from the cloud backup I still had access to. I found the photos, not the explicit ones, but the casual, intimate ones, him laughing with her, her head on his shoulder, them holding hands. I found the email, the one where he wrote to her, "I can't wait to leave her. I'm ready to start over." I didn't confront him immediately. I let the anger simmer, let the betrayal settle into my bones. I waited until the morning of the group chat message, the moment where he finally cracked, where he couldn't hold it in anymore, where he had to tell the world before he could tell me. When I saw the text, I didn't run to him. I sat there, staring at the screen, realizing that the man I had loved for 6 years was a stranger who had been living a double life right under my nose, and the worst part was that I had known. I had known, and I had stayed. The aftermath was a spiral of emotions that felt like being thrown into a blender set to high. The first thing I did was block him on every platform, delete his number, and lock the doors. I called my sister, and she screamed, and I cried, and we both knew this was the end. Then came the denial. I tried to tell myself it was a mistake, that he would come back, that we could fix this, that love could conquer betrayal. I called him, begging him to come home, promising that we could work through it, that I would understand. He didn't come home. He stayed at a hotel, and he told me he needed space. He told me he needed to figure out who he was without me. Then came the rage. I told our mutual friends, I told his parents, I told his colleagues. I expected everyone to be on my side, to understand the magnitude of what he had done. But when I told his mother, she told me to be reasonable, that men make mistakes, that he was stressed, that I was probably too demanding. When I told his best friend, he told me to give him time, that he didn't think it was as bad as I thought. Even his father, a man I had always respected, told me that I was overreacting, that I should just forgive and move on. I was alone in a way I had never been before. The loneliest moment was sitting in my living room, surrounded by my own belongings, looking at the empty spot on the bed where he used to sleep, realizing that everyone around me was trying to minimize what had happened, trying to find a reason why he wasn't entirely in the wrong. I realized in that moment that there was no justice, no one who would stand up for me and say, "You are the victim, and he is the villain." I decided to stay in the house, but I knew it was over. The marriage was dead. The love was gone. The only thing left was the wreckage. I didn't try to fix it. I didn't try to make it work. I just let the silence take over, and I started packing my things, slowly, methodically, preparing for a life without him. If I look at this story from both sides, from the perspective of the betrayed and the betrayer, I see a tragedy that is far more complex than a simple villain and victim narrative. From my perspective, I was the one who was hurt, the one who was lied to, the one who had to rebuild a life from the ashes. I felt betrayed not just by the act of cheating, but by the erosion of trust that had been happening for years. I felt a deep, profound grief for the loss of the relationship I thought we had, the loss of the future we had planned. I felt angry that he had stolen my time, my money, and my trust, and that he had done it with a smile, with a lie, with a plan. From his perspective, I believe he was trapped. He felt unseen, unappreciated, and emotionally starved. He told himself that he was looking for something he couldn't find at home, that he was looking for validation, for a connection that he couldn't get from me. He told himself that he wasn't hurting me, that he was just trying to find a way to be happy, that he was looking for a way out of a relationship that had become a prison for him. He told himself that he would leave eventually, that he would come back to me, that he would make it right. He told himself that he was a good man who had just made a bad mistake. He told himself that he loved Elena, that he was falling in love with someone who made him feel alive, and that he couldn't go on pretending. But in that justification, he erased the years of love we had shared, the years of effort I had put into the relationship, the years of patience I had shown him when he was distant. He erased the fact that he was the one who chose to lie, to cheat, to steal, to betray. He told himself he was a victim of his own unhappiness, but he was also the architect of his own destruction. He told himself he was looking for a way out, but he was looking for an excuse to hurt me. I missed the signs because I was too in love to see them, too desperate to fix things, too willing to believe in the version of him that I wanted to see. I missed the fact that love is not enough to sustain a relationship when one person is no longer willing to show up, when one person is looking for an exit rather than a way in. So, guilty or not? Is Marcus purely guilty, a man who betrayed his wife, stole from her, and destroyed their marriage for a fleeting romance? Or is the situation more complicated than it appears, a story of two people who grew apart, who stopped seeing each other, who stopped communicating, who let the silence grow until it swallowed everything? Was I entirely blameless, a perfect victim who saw nothing wrong until it was too late? Or did I miss the signs, did I ignore the red flags, did I stay in a relationship that was already dead because I was afraid of being alone? Marcus is guilty. He is guilty of the betrayal, of the lies, of the theft, of the emotional abandonment. He made choices, and those choices had consequences. But he is also a man who felt unloved, who felt invisible, who felt trapped. I am not blameless. I missed the signs. I ignored the red flags. I stayed in a relationship that was already dead because I was afraid of being alone. I let the silence grow until it swallowed everything. But does that make me less of a victim? Does it make the betrayal less real? Does it make the pain less deep? The answer is no. The betrayal was real, the pain was deep, and the consequences were severe. But the relationship was a two-way street, and we both failed to keep it open. We both failed to see the cracks, to fix the cracks, to walk away before it was too late. So, guilty or not? Love, lies, and hard choices. You decide. If you're watching this, and you've ever been in a relationship like this, where you felt like you were walking on eggshells, where you felt like you were losing yourself, where you felt like you were the only one trying, I want you to know that you are not alone. I want you to know that it's not your fault if you stayed, if you tried to fix it, if you believed the lies. I want you to know that you deserve better. I want you to know that you deserve a love that is honest, that is open, that is real. If you've ever been in a similar situation, if you've ever had to make a hard choice, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments below. What would you have done? Would you have stayed? Would you have left? Would you have forgiven? Let's talk about it. And if you want to hear more stories like this, if you want to dive deeper into the complexities of relationships, the betrayals, and the hard choices we make sure to subscribe to Guilty or Not, Relationships. We have a new story coming next week, a story about a long-distance relationship that turned into a web of lies, a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust. So, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's talk about the next betrayal together. Because love is complicated, and so are we. And I'll see you in the next one.